people who kind of study just like the way that we have evolved as human beings have kind of found that this idea of free will is a feeling that we have. It's a sense that comes kind of like after the fact when it comes to like action, where we feel like we have some agency because we have developed the ability to create a conjunction between this idea of like the past, the present, and the future. So, as we evolved, the organisms that were able to say, hold on, wait a minute, yesterday I did this, and today I want to do that. They were able to strive for different goals, achieve more, and that's kind of just going to be like reminiscent of like intelligence and things of that sort. So essentially, it's just that if there's nothing that internally, right, is uniquely kind of causing your actions or your thoughts. Instead, your thoughts prompt your actions, but your thoughts have some cause that are either due to some type of biology or some type of nurture. This is kind of like the whole field of psychology, the nature and nurture debate. And then, there are many different angles we can take this from. It's pretty simple, so, yeah.
Okay, if you guys want to just get into it, it's open conversation. So
in regards to your claim that free will is basically some type of feeling that we have, would you agree that you are parodying like epiphenomenalism?
Sorry, what's epiphenomenalism?
Epiphenomenalism is essentially that consciousness is something that is a byproduct of neurosynapses, brain activity, and it's not an emergent property, right? So emergentism is kind of the state of neuroscience right now, and determinism was really couched in epiphenomenalism. So it's an epiphenomenon of brain activity. It's a sense that you're free, but it's not actually you're free. That's called epiphenomenalism.
I think there's a distinction between consciousness in of itself and free will. I think that free will is an illusion, correct? We're still a little bit kind of murky on like the nature of consciousness in of itself, but I do believe that free will is a feeling rather than something that is true, something that you can locate, et cetera. I think that instead it's kind of like our conception of like these processes and like the ways that we interact with the world.
So you're arguing that the only thing that exists is materialism, right?
Like the material world?
The material world, right?
I don't think I have to posit that to make my claim. Not necessarily. I'm simply
I'm asking, what is your claim? Are you a materialist?
I don't think I have to, like, I haven't completely refined, like, my ideas on kind of, like, materialism versus idealism. I would probably be a materialist, but I don't think I have to, that entails this conversation or it's necessary for the conversation. So.
Well, the idea is if you're assuming materialism or any sort of epiphenomenal understanding of free will as some type of experience that's not rooted in actual consciousness or human agency, it's a circular argument because you're appealing to materialism, your brain, to come up with the universal truth statement that everything is determined.
Hold on, I'm not appealing to the brain. I'm saying that like...
Now, how do you come to your knowledge claims?
Okay, so I'm saying that our brain interacts with our environment, right? And that is what creates our wants and desires. And those two things, like for example,
That's compatibilism.
No, that's not. That's how like people make decisions, right?
But that's called compatibilism.
No. So compatibilism is the idea that free will is when you act in accordance with your wants.
Yes, that are shaped by the external environment.
Yeah, and then
that's exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and then,
exactly.
And then determinists.
Thank you.
Determinists also say, right, that we are also shaped by our wants, but free will does not mean that you act in accordance with your will. It means that you would have some agency in the moment to do whatever you want. In regards to like compatibilism versus determinism, we actually agree on the same facts of reality. We just define free will differently. So yeah, compatibilists would also say, you're a product of your environment and your biology, just as a determinist would.
Yeah. They just changed the semantic word of freedom, and they say that you're making choices amongst conditioned responses. That's what compatibilism is.
Okay, awesome. So there's a difference there in like
that's why
what should be determined free will.
Okay. So let's get into epistemology. How do you? Okay. So are you believe in objective truth?
That there is objective truth?
Yes.
I would say that like we can't make claims onto reality as it absolutely is. I think that like our kind of faculties...
Isn't that what you're doing right now?
Hold on.
Isn't that what you're doing?
We make assumptions every day, right? That like the world around us exists. So we can do things like science, right? And psychology.
And that's induction.
Yeah, it's an assumption, right? That everyone like acts upon today. We don't really know what the world exists outside, what it looks like outside of a human body. We know that, like, for example, ants don't see the same things as us, neither do, like, insects. Like, even the color schemes that we see are different than animals. So we know that, like, objectively, the world does not look the way that we see it, right? But we assume that it exists to interact with it, for ease, et cetera. That's how scientists come to conclusions. There are baseline assumptions, right, to engage with any of these practices.
Yeah, but science is also appealing to the laws of logic, the law of identity, and all these different things. I asked you a simple question.
But they all lie on assumptions, yeah.
No, they're not assumptions. So you don't believe that 2 plus 2 equals 4.
We rely on the.
Does 2 plus 2 equal 4?
We rely on the assumption.
Does 2 plus 2
Can
equal
I answer
4?
your question? Because
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a debate where like you're going to interrupt me and we can't have like fruitful
Go ahead.
discussion.
If we
Awesome.
can, yeah, just allow people to finish their.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So relying on the assumption that everything around us exists and things of that nature, yeah, I completely agree that there is some truth that we can find, but you must agree upon reality as the basis, right?
So, regarding objective truth, I want to just hammer down what exactly your epistemology is.
My epistemology?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that in general, I don't think we can say that something is objectively true because I don't think we can truly see reality as it truly is because we already know that our faculties of experience, our senses are set in some way that we know other animals already don't have, right? So we can only trust like the human experience and like what like patterns that we recognize across the human mind, but we don't exactly know what it could look like outside of a human faculty of like perception. Do you understand what that means?
Yeah, which means that you just refuted yourself to
No,
make.
it
You're
doesn't.
making universal claims right now.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Nope. So this debate.
You're making universal
we're
claims.
We're not having. Okay.
You just said free will
so
doesn't
this debate
exist.
Relies,
You just
this debate.
now you're cutting me off. So why don't
Okay, do you
why
wanna
don't you
keep
stop and just relax for a second? Because what
Okay.
you did is you just fundamentally contradicted yourself by saying that all we do is we have experiences of our environment. We really can't make universal truth claims, and then you're coming here to actually make a universal truth claim by saying free will doesn't exist, or free will is just an experience, or free will is epiphenomenal, and therefore you've already undermined your own epistemological
So,
foundation
for
and
any-
leads to the inability to have any sort of
Okay.
rational inquiry.
So for any conversation that you have, usually we have some subliminal assumption that relies like within the conversation. For example, if I'm just like let's say I love the Hunger Games and I'm like Katniss is like the best. She's the best ever. She is the best huntress ever, whatever. You could be like, oh, you're making a universal truth claim. Oh no. But actually,
No,
in that conversation,
that's a preference.
what is entailed,
That's a
right?
preference.
Yeah, right.
That's
That's
not
a
a
preference,
truth
but it's a statement.
No,
right? It
that's-
assumes that she's a person.
You realize there's a difference
Right?
between
So
universal
in that
truth claims and
can I
preferences,
finish my
right?
point?
Let her
Thank
finish.
you.
Let her finish.
Right. So in that conversation, there's an assumption made that we're presuming that we're making the presumption that these people exist at some sense, I guess, of being like fictional characters, right? But there's an assumption there that you're making. So I think the most correct way to say that would be like assuming or like knowing that she's a fictional character, Katniss is like the best huntress ever, right? But like whenever we're in a conversation, whether it be metaphysical, whether it be philosophical, political, there are some underlying assumptions made to make any claim. The underlying assumption with this claim that I'm making is that free will is an illusion, right? So, but
That's a universal claim.
no, it's not. No, it's not.
You just said it's
What
an
is
illusion.
what is a universal claim?
A universal claim is when you make a fact or a truth claim that is universal.
Yeah, no. So it would also mean
That-
it's
yeah, that's what it
do you
is.
think so?
That's what it is.
Do you see it as synonymous with absolute claims? Do you see that as like a distinction
Between
absolute claims and universal claims?
those would be the same thing. An
Okay,
absolute claim would be
awesome.
universal.
Right. So I would make a claim if you want to make it synonymous with like something that just like has to be true. I think that we don't know that anything has to be true unless we like presume that this reality as we live in it is true. Do you understand that?
Yeah, but you just
for-
said there's no point in a debate
I
because
never said
it's
there's no point in the debate.
your premise, the worldview, every paradigm has premises and presuppositions built into it. This is called presuppositionalism. And so your presuppositions
Okay.
contradict the ability to make the claims that
You
you're
understand
making.
that scientists do this like all
No,
the time,
scientists.
right?
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Scientists presume
you don't
that
have
we
a
can make
worldview that
some
allows
accurate-
science.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Scientists acknowledge this. Yeah, they do.
I'm very aware.
Do you know what like the law of causality is?
Oh, yeah, I know what the law of.
Okay,
do
what's
you?
the law of causality?
You tell me. You're the one
Okay.
that's bringing it
You're
up,
the
right?
one who
You're the
has-
one that has it written
Okay.
down on her paper here
Yeah,
so she can look down and read the
it's-
definition.
Okay, it is here. But yeah, people, you have notes.
These
too.
are
But-
these are outlines for your worldview.
They're different.
I don't
than
have
mine.
definitions written
Okay.
down.
Anyway, the law of causality essentially says that every event has some cause, right? If it doesn't have a cause, it's random, right? And we make all these claims assuming that we can make some type of like statements on reality, presuming that it exists, right? Scientists must presume that reality exists to make the claims that they do. So in the circumstances of this debate, I'm going to presume that reality exists, and therefore I'm going to make the claim that any event is either caused or uncaused. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but it's still, you have no epistemological foundation to make
Do
an
you know
actual
what
claim.
epistemology has to do with what
Do
we
you
can
know what
know?
you're a senior. I have a PhD. I exactly know exactly what epistemology is.
So it's the study of knowledge, what we can know, et cetera, right?
Exactly.
So even in that gives us a framework for knowledge, right? It is the framework that we use.
And I'm saying that you can't make universal knowledge claims within that paradigm.
I don't think I am making a universal knowledge claim.
Does free will exist?
No.
Okay, then that is a claim. So at no point now
presuming that reality exists, yes.
At no point right now, in the future, in the past, free will has existed, correct?
No.
It has or hasn't?
It doesn't exist.
Okay, that is called a universal truth claim. So you just made a universal truth claim. You just contradicted the fundamental premise of your worldview.
That claim exists overlying the foundation, this idea that reality exists, right? But that's an assumption, right? So we make baseline assumptions that you exist, that I exist, that I'm not hallucinating right now.
So your whole presentation is an assumption.
Yeah, it's just like we do this every day.
No, it's not, because I believe in the laws of logic.
You can say that you know that you're not like, a brain in a vat right now, right? And I don't think that you are, right? I choose to believe that you're not, because all the evidence I have, like navigating this world, right, points to the fact that we all exist, that we're all agents, right, et cetera, right? So I make this presumption, but it's a very, very testable presumption, and it's almost fact. Like gravity is also a theory, but I believe in gravity because it's testable, right? So just because something is an assumption does not mean that we can't use it or that it's not justifiable in any way.
Yeah, it does actually mean that it's not.
Do you not believe in gravity?
That's now. Of course, I believe in gravity. That's a non-sequitur. It's a really dumb argument that you're making. So what?
Okay, so you understand theories can hold true.
But theories can actually be built on logical basis.
Yes, and so does this one.
Okay, so where do you? So how do the laws of logic exist? Because these are non-physical things. Yeah. I'm curious what your cosmology is, because if you believe in the Big Bang, and you believe in material evolution ever since then you can't appeal to things like what are called philosophical transcendentals. You can't appeal to the laws of logic. You can't appeal to number theory. You can't appeal to all these different things because they're non-physical and they're universal and they're unchanging. You can't have let me finish. Let me finish.
You're right. I'm sorry.
You can't have non-changing, non-physical things in an entirely materialist universe. This is a known thing.
I'm not posing any idea of like a non-changing thing.
That's my point.
Okay.
That's exactly my point.
Awesome.
Do you understand?
So
what do you think my argument is? Because it doesn't sound like
that free will exists and that we are causal agents.
Without free will, there is no reason.
Right,
rationality depends upon the ability to choose between things.
Right. So I think that human beings can develop rationality and pattern recognition, but the cause for that is determined. Right. You can someone can learn and learn to read patterns or learn to make connections to things, but the causes for that person to get to that point of neuroplasticity is determined. That's what I'm saying. So you can have a want, you can have a desire, you can act on that desire. You can be forced against acting on your desire, but those desires are things that you don't choose. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and my point is that if that's the case, then being here and trying to persuade people to your worldview makes no sense.
Do you have any contention with the actual view, though? Because
I've laid out multiple points about how your paradigm makes no. Let me finish. You just talked. Let me finish.
No, I didn't get to finish. You kept speaking.
What?
I think it was her turn to talk. Let her finish, and then go ahead, David.
Uh-oh.
Or sorry, Patrick. My mistake.